Alright, hey guys, this is Bert from SoftTubes, and I am here with a review that I have waited a long time to do. This is Avengers Endgame. And I'm going to have to start it with a disclaimer that I've done, I believe, a couple times already. I love Marvel. I love Marvel. Not just the MCU, but the comics. I've been reading them since I was about 16, and I've loved reading them ever since then. Avengers was what, like, the first comic I ever got was New Avengers number 20. It was the first comic I ever read, and I've read most of the Avengers run since then. There's been a few times I've stopped, but I've pretty much always read it because it's always the best value for characters, getting the most variety of characters. And then it's also always very central to the film, like the story of the universe itself. It's always like the most central thing, typically. And from that, I watched as Marvel decided to form their own film studio and start making movies of their own. And I latched onto every little detail about the Iron Man movie before it came out. And it was funny because I was studying film at the same time that that movie was coming out. And so I got to see this company I loved making the movie into film by themselves. So for me, it was really, really exciting. I mean, I just love Marvel. So let's talk about why I loved Endgame. So I saw it last night with Chris and Haley. Sorry, I think I got Pokemon in my mouth because I just saw it again this morning. So I'm kind of trying to keep things fresh in my mind and make sure I knew exactly what my thoughts were before I went into it. There's something really there. I will say right now, I will not be avoiding spoilers. I thought about doing it, but I could have done two reviews, one without spoilers, one with spoilers, but there was always a risk I was going to dip in the wrong one, and I decided not to do that. I decided just to do one review. So if you came just to see what my thoughts were, I'll run it down really quickly, and then I'm going to jump into my full review full of spoilers. So straight up, this is a 4.5 out of 5 film for me. And that is a very personal review. I'm not necessarily like, I should have said this in other reviews. I will never necessarily try to say just because something has a 4.5 compared to a 4 doesn't mean it's necessarily a better movie. A lot of that will be my own bias, so there is things I liked about that movie more than the other movie. And that can change too. Just because I give it a 4.5 at one point doesn't mean it'll stay that way. But that's just how I kind of do it. I don't want to try and be like, no, it's a 4.5 film if you say otherwise you're wrong. Because everything is subjective. Art is subjective, I should say. The technicalities of filmmaking are not, and that's a different matter. But as the film as a whole, as entertainment, I give it a 4.5. It's absolutely a film for people who love the MCU. And without seeing at least half of the films before this, you're going to lose a lot out of it. I only really feel that it's necessary to have watched Infinity War before this, but even if, like, you definitely need to have watched Infinity War, at the very least. But even then, it's not going to be the same experience. You're only going to be like, oh, okay, these threads have continued on. You're not going to get all the other stuff. It just wraps up so many things in such a great way that it's going to make most fans, I think, happy. I think there'll be some who probably won't be entirely happy, but I think it'll give most fans, like, something to be really happy about. And it gives plenty of moments for readers of the comics specifically. That they just get to be like, oh, it's that thing, or it's this thing, or that thing. Like, there were so many moments I did where I'm like, finally they did the thing that I've wanted so long. And it was really cool to see. There was a couple, like, I had people talk to me who saw it before me, saying there was something that they ruined in the other films, and then they could have fixed, but they made worse in this at the end. I don't know what it was. Clearly, it was something I never had a problem with, because I could not pick it up for the life of me. But there's clearly stuff that some people just don't really attach to. But from what I understand, most people I've known who even feel that way love the rest of it enough. But that kind of covers the non-spoiler stuff. That's kind of the basic thoughts. So I'm going to jump into spoiler territory now. So if you don't want spoilers, this is kind of when I end the video. And then, yeah. So 4.5 out of 5, though. You know, that's always good to know. So I went into Endgame. I nearly called it Infinity War. I'm probably going to do that a couple times by accident. I went in trying not to build up too many ideas for myself. I mentioned this before, where I said I think it's kind of like I didn't want to try and theorize too much about what's happening. Because sometimes you can get too excited about your own theories and then the film doesn't quite match. Even when it's good, it doesn't quite match up to those theories. So you start going like, it's not what I wanted. It's not what I thought it was going to be. And again, it's that thing of like, I also don't want to get into that trap of like, oh, I guessed the right thing, therefore I'm clever. Because that's just idiocy. Like, yeah, you thought of something other people have thought of. Like, it's not like some miracle that you came up with an answer that happened to be in the film. Because I do think, like, I've seen things that were accurate to what is in the film. Not entirely accurate. There is a lot that was wrong still. Just some really broad strokes were correct in a lot of the theories. But, I've got my notes. I'm trying to make sure my head's all in the right place. But yeah, I was trying to, like, there were a few things that I would have liked to have seen in the film. That before it, I was like, oh, it'd be cool to see this, it'd be cool to see that. But I mean, a lot of them I knew were never going to happen. There was one idea I had, like, oh, it'd be so cool if they actually had cast the Fantastic Four in secret beforehand, just in case. And then they're able to just throw in something. But I knew it was never going to happen. They were never going to bother doing that until the deal was through. And they actually knew exactly what they wanted to do with those characters moving forward. And they couldn't do anything before it. But there are a few things that I wanted that did happen, and this is probably the most of the spoilers in my review. So, the first thing it does is, and it does a really easy recap at the beginning of the film, and it also starts with an emotional hit. And this is something I really wanted it to do and thought it should do, is it opens on the Barton family on their farm, like hanging out. And it's no surprise, if you've seen Infinity War, you know what's coming. You know basically like what's going to happen. But it's still an emotional moment to watch, especially because you do know. So all these little moments of him with his family leading up until that moment is really like heart-wrenching to watch. At least for me, I love Hawkeye. Even though I don't think he's been done very well in the films compared to the comics, I still love Hawkeye. And it was really hurtful for me to watch him go through all of it. And so it's like, it's no surprise to see what happens essentially, but it then like shifts from that into wrapping up some dangling threads left over from Infinity War. You probably know exactly what I'm talking about with like Iron Man and stuff. They sort of get into like getting all that out of the way, so then they can jump into doing basically, here's a full catch up on everything and where it's up to, and here's our plan moving forward. So you kind of get it kind of keeps that momentum rolling, essentially. It does that really quickly, and it's a really smart move. It doesn't try to let you drag too long with anything. And this jumps into the second thing I wanted, which is probably a major, major spoiler. In the lead up, I kept saying to people I knew, oh, I reckon they need to kill Thanos really early in the movie. They go deal with him, and they kill him off immediately. Like, get rid of him. And that happens. And it works for two things. Like, I kind of saw it coming, so I was like, oh, cool. But it's one of those things like, oh, I didn't really expect them to do it, but they did do it. I'm like, I can see why. And firstly, it's a shock. It's a shock for an audience who don't see it coming. They're like, well, Thanos is still a big threat, so obviously there's going to be something going on there. And then he's just gone, and you're like, oh, fuck. And everything kind of just ends. So it basically, because what it also does is it wraps up everything leading up to that moment. It wraps up all the sort of stuff they've been building on of like, we've got to deal with Thanos. We've got to take out Thanos. And it gets rid of all that. Like, they're suddenly left with nothing. There's nothing to... There's no lingering threads anymore. There's nothing to avenge any further. And a new status quo is established for when the film is allowed to then jump into the future. It stops everything as it is and allows you to make that shift. Whereas if you'd left Thanos out there and jumped into the future, it'd be like, well, why didn't they deal with him earlier? Why didn't they do this? This just goes like, yep, no, he's out of the picture. This is out of the picture. This is our status quo. And so you're able to just go, cool, I'm with that straight away. It also does a really, like, allows it being able to do that cutoff. It makes the changeover from Infinity War. Infinity War was a very darker kind of movie compared to this. It's a lot more lighthearted, and it's kind of needed. Because the transition allows it to become that. It allows it to make that transfer instead of suddenly becoming a different movie, which is a hell of a thing to do. And like I was saying, it was needed to be lighthearted because it needed to ease audiences into the craziness that was coming. And it keeps doing it with like little crazy moments. It's like, yeah, remember Rocket and remember Ant-Man and stuff like this. And it's like slowly builds to the more crazy stuff. And it needed to do that. Getting the audience comfortable with this film is really important because it doesn't really give you a lot of moments to breathe. There's a few slower moments in the film, but it mostly just keeps going from moment to moment. The pacing isn't perfect. At least not always. Like, there's moments where it's not great. Most of the time I felt it was pretty good for what it was, at the very least. It was good. Sometimes it was exactly what it needed, and other times it felt a little low, but not that bad. It does a good enough job throughout the film that it doesn't detract from the story, and that's the most important thing. There's no moment where it feels like the story is being hurt by the fact it keeps jumping. It feels like it makes sense. But there's plenty of character moments within all of the super heroics that are constantly going on. Even, it's funny because it's even like they're not necessarily doing heroic stuff, but they're still in costume and doing crazy things. And so it makes it feel more real amongst all that crazy to have these moments where you're like, oh, I get to sit with this character. And it also reminds you what you love about these characters and lets you build on those a little bit and have all those like things to keep on building out what you know and love. I mean, this is a film that knows that it's essentially the finale to 11 years of other films. It knows that. And it embraces it so strongly that I don't, like, in a way that I don't think any other film, sorry about the chair, I don't think any other film could do, or it would be very difficult to find another film. This is kind of a once-in-a-lifetime movie to be able to do that. Most times this would fall apart, and it should have fallen apart by all rights. And, I mean, thankfully, it doesn't feel like, at least for me, fan service for the sake of fan service. There are so many movies where you see that and you're like, oh, yeah, I get it, you're doing that. And superhero movies tend to be pretty bad for it, but everything seems to play into the plot or characterization or something. It all makes sense in the entirety. The middle of this film is essentially an ode to all of the films that have come before it and to the story that has been weaved thus far. And there's just throwbacks throughout it, but they feel more natural. They don't feel like, there's still that bit where you can be like, oh yeah, they threw it in because of this. But it's still a natural flow to it that sort of stops it being just like, oh, okay, and just an eye roll kind of moment. This is an Avengers movie through and through, and it honors the legacy in a way that few films could, like I said. Like, it just knows what it is, and I love that about a movie. I will prefer a movie that knows what it is than something that tries to be something else. This movie went, I'm a superhero movie, I'm the end of this, I've got to do these things. And it just knew that, and it made it so much better for it. And now, sort of going into a bit of a shift, the cast are all in top form here. Like, the thing is, there's so many people in this cast that I'm not going to go through each of them. You know what to expect at this point. All you really need to know is that all your main Avengers, at the very least, they are fully confident in those roles and the characters and know how to play them for each beat. The one I am going to comment on, because I've heard a few people I know comment on it, is Brie Larson, and I'm going to defend her somewhat. So I've heard a few people I know saying that they feel that she was a little flat. They weren't really feeling her, she felt too out of place. And I personally don't see it. I heard people say with Captain Marvel, and I watched that movie 4 times. And every time I saw it, I saw more nuance to her performance. There was like, because I had someone going like, she's not emotional in the entire film, even they bring it up. And I'm like, she showed a lot of emotion. There's a lot of emotion there. And the thing that I think it is, from my point of view, and from watching her in like this and a few other things, is that it's because of the kind of actor she is. Brie Larson is a very naturalistic actor. And that's not to say she's necessarily too good or anything like that. I know people are going to misconstrue my words on what I mean by that. I've had someone I know, like, in a mocking way, go like, oh, people aren't smart enough to understand what her acting. And I'm like, that's not what I'm saying. Nothing along those lines. It's just a particular style of acting she does. But it's a style of acting that feels somewhat out of place within a superhero film. Because in superhero films, you're used to everything being over the top. And especially the characters being over the top. Chris Evans is probably the least over the top of the Avengers. But he's still kind of over the top in a lot of ways. He still projects this overt righteousness, these overt ideals, that Carol has very much a lot of the same ideals, and she proves it time and again, but the way she holds herself is a lot more naturalistic. She holds herself a bit lower. It's a bit more subdued but with still the same nuance, but it makes it feel, when you've got her surrounded by all these other people, a little out of place. And it should also be noted that this movie was the first movie that Brie Larson was Carol. Like, this was filmed before Captain Marvel, so she was really trying to find her feet on the character, because they kind of let, from what I've heard, they let their actors kind of decide the feel for the character. So she was trying to find that. And she was still kind of doing that in Captain Marvel, but I understand it, because her film was supposed to have come out years ago, and then Spider-Man caused a reshuffle that pushed it back. And her film needed to come out a little bit ago, because I think we needed to get more comfortable with Carol amongst all of this other stuff. Because it's not even just the acting, I think, is the problem. Like, it's not like just because she feels separate, but also her power set and everything. Like, and I know I'm going to get some angry people about this, but part of me feels like it's also a sex-based thing. So I don't think, if Captain America acted exactly the same way that Captain Marvel does, I don't think people would have brought it up. If Bruce Banner acted in the same manner, if any male actor, I can't prove this, it's just a theory I've got just from the way people have acted around certain things. Because she's such a powerful character, especially, it makes it more of a harsh thing. So it becomes more overt. She has to act within a very set range of what people expect in order to not be too much of a Mary Sue, but not too much of a useless character, but not too much of this or that. Female characters have a very strict line they have to walk compared to male characters, typically. And that doesn't mean everyone who doesn't like her acting is coming from a sexist point of view, just that some are, even if they don't know it. It's culturally a bit more of a thing. And that's not even a full defense of it, it's just these are my opinions. Like, I liked her acting, and I really liked watching her as Captain Marvel. And the fact is, she had very little screen time in this movie too. Given this was her first time being Carol, she gets very little screen time throughout the film, so it becomes harder to find footing in that. She had some good moments, I felt. And, I mean, at the very least, she got Carol's short hair, and I fucking loved it. I am all for it. I love that style, and I'm so happy to see it. It does make me sad, though, that apparently the next Captain Marvel might be still set in the past of, like, what she was doing in between her first film and Endgame. So we won't get that hair again for a while, but I'm still all for it, and I totally want an A-Force movie with her in the lead, because I feel like that's what we need. Her stuff with her and Fury in Captain Marvel is freaking awesome. It's some of the best stuff. I think you give her a good team to bounce stuff off of as a leader, and I think we will see exactly who Carol can be in these films. And I'm realizing, looking at my time, that I could go on and on as I keep recalling different parts of this film. There's so many things that are jumping to mind, like talking about, like, I want an A-Force film with an all-female team with Carol leading. Like, I'm thinking about certain moments, and then that's leading to other moments, and it's like this thing happened, and this thing happened, and everything sort of deserves its own little comment, but there's not enough time to do it all in, or at least not that then I would be able to go like, okay, and I'm like, oh no, wait, there's this. So I'm going to have to conclude it here, but I'm going to end it by saying that the final third of this film is the ultimate ode to Marvel and the heroes that they have built. It's what it is through and through. There are so many moments in the final sequences, the final battle, that made me excited and shaken and just emotional in such a kind of raw way. It's a moment I have waited 11 years for. I have wanted to see this for so long since they started doing these films, and it lived up to pretty much everything I wanted all the way back then. Knowing, like, the only way this could have been improved is if they'd had Fox for years and were able to bring all that into it. And all those elements, but that wasn't a thing yet. So what we get is still incredible for what they had, and probably still just enough. Maybe more would have been too much. It manages to put a nice stop on things that this could have been the final Marvel Studios film, and it just would have felt right. It just would have felt so perfect. But it still manages to not feel like an end. It manages to continue to build to a new future that I am super excited to see. That's the thing I think about this movie is there was a bit where I was like, oh, like, yeah, last night before I saw it, I was like, oh, it'll be interesting to see where, if people are kind of over these films now that the Avengers is kind of done as far as we know. There's no announcement for another Avengers film of any kind with any cast. So all we like got in the relation to those guys is kind of in the TV shows they're bringing out. I was like, I don't know if people are going to be over it, but after seeing it, for me personally, I'm more excited to see what they do. I'm excited to see them spread further, do more, find more things they can do. I'm just so excited for it. And the end of this film, everyone I have I've heard from that I know has seen it, it brought tears to their eyes. And it filled me with joy and a sadness that I never fully anticipated from this film. It brought back so much for me. And it's a movie I've seen twice now. I'm going to need to see it again and again while there are audiences in those screenings, because this is a film for me. I love going and seeing films when I can just embrace the reactions of an audience around me. This is a movie that's perfect for it. I love it so much. But that's kind of have to be it, guys. So I was Bird, and you know what? If you've got any thoughts about the Endgame, if you've seen it yet, if you haven't seen it but you still watch this for some reason, leave comments below and let me know. I know some of you, or at least some people, are going to have comments about certain things I've said. That's totally cool. Just try and keep it civil. Don't be too abusive or anything like that. I have to say that when there's certain things that I know might be controversial with some people or abrasive with some people, I have to kind of be like, just be kind to each other. Don't be an asshole, essentially. And if you like this review, make sure you hit the like button. And if you didn't like it, you can let me know by hitting the dislike button. And if you're new to the channel, this was the first thing you watched, you should totally hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell if you really want to know whenever new stuff comes out, because you'll find we do a lot of stuff here. It's been mostly me for a while. We're still working out stuff. People have had changes in their lives with George and Chris, so we're sort of working stuff out still. But I mean, at least from me, I'm putting out reaction videos, reviews of films, gameplay videos. I'm still playing through Oxenfree. The next part might be a little bit off. I'm kind of busy coming up this weekend, so I don't know what next week's going to be like. This is coming out on Friday. There probably wasn't a video yesterday because I didn't have a lot of time amongst seeing. Yesterday is today for me. I'm really busy at the moment, but I'm trying to keep things going. There might be something on Saturday, maybe. I'm busy on Saturday, but if I get it done Friday afternoon, it'll be up tomorrow, essentially. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next video.
Ensuring freedom around the globe.
Oh.
To the nation.
Oh, yeah.
A hero to the world.
God.
The beacon of hope, shining out across the
Such
sky.
a good movie. Not that one so much.